there's a couple of key demographic trends in BC and in Canada, and they're similar in that we have the inevitable aging of our existing population, baby boomers who are the leading edge of whom are 65, and the bulk of whom are, in and around the age of 50, who over the next 30 years are going to become 30 years older. And that will have implications for our housing market on the one hand, but also our labor market and the capacity of our economy to grow. And so that's where migration becomes important in terms of warm bodies, adding people to the labor force to replace retirees, but also bringing in a younger profile than the existing residents to create a more favorable balance between the working age population and that seniors group. I think it depends what type of employer you are and where, what line of business you're in and where in the province you do your business. Generally, it's about being more strategic about, how you attract and retain workers. And I think maybe the way things were done in the past may not work in the future. And I think we're going to have to see an increased focus on the attraction of immigrants to our smaller communities. I mean, that's our rural communities who are largely impacted by this outward migration of young workers. And they're not the recipient of the young immigrants who are moving to BC. They tend to settle in the metropolitan regions. So I think that for employers in rural BC, that's going to be a real challenge, is expanding their horizons in that respect. But also private sector working with governments, different levels of governments, to try to better match the demands, the skill demands, and with the people that have them in the community. I think it's good. I think it's sort of integrating or attracting Aboriginals with who may not have the skills today for a particular line of work, but who could obtain them in a short period of time. I think that's fantastic. At the same time, I think the investment in trades is important, given the resource base of this economy and where a lot of these big projects that need a lot of workers are. We've looked at data though on the percentage of people going to trade colleges versus universities. We haven't seen a big change in that recently. So the investments are being made, and we may start reaping the rewards in the coming years, but I don't think we've seen that yet. Because of the nature of the source of our perceived source of economic growth in the coming years, which has a timeline on it. A lot of it is around construction. I mean, a lot of the resource projects that we have slated for BC, in terms of ongoing employment, they're not going to be significant as service sector jobs. It's not to say they're not as important, but I think the big crunch is finding the workers to get the infrastructure in place to start extracting value from some of the resources we have. I think it's important for us to remain diversified. I mean, I think Alberta has been benefiting from being almost singularly focused on oil in recent years, but it can go the other way, and it has in the past. So there's pros and cons to having a narrow scope of economic activity. So I think in the long run, what we want to do is capitalize on our resources, but at the same time retain some of that diversity that we have in our employment base.